Welcome to Leading for Wellness. I'm Liesl Bernard, CEO of Cologne Executive Search and Leading for Wellness events. Each week, we dive into the journeys of visionary wellness entrepreneurs, uncovering their secrets to success. Get ready for insightful conversations that will inspire you to elevate your business and prioritize your well-being. Let's dive in. Today, I have the great pleasure of introducing Elan Sudberg, founder and CEO of Alkemist Labs, to our episode. Alkemist Labs is a leading independent contract laboratory specializing in botanical identification and analytical testing for the dietary supplement, natural food, and functional mushroom industries. I can't wait to get into this conversation. Hi, Elan. I'm so excited about our conversation today. Thank you very much for joining me. I also had the pleasure of seeing your amazing Alkemist Lab earlier this week, so can't wait to get more into the details on our discussion today.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So I'd love to start, by kind of you grew up in a family where your mom was a microbiologist, your dad was an acupuncturist or herbalist, and also a chiropractor. And I'd love to know how that shaped your beliefs and your philosophies, and how that was sort of the start of creating Alkemist Labs.
Yeah, so I'd like to say that I was, well, first, thank you for having me here. Absolute honor. And it was great having you at the lab and your team as well. So yeah, I'd like to say that I was raised free range. My parents, kept us pretty natural. And so I grew up with not going to the medical doctor for various ailments. We treated, colds and sicknesses with natural products, mainly herbal medicine, Chinese herbal medicine. And my dad made tinctures for his chiropractic patients in our garage. And as a kid, I grew up with, bags of herbs and hydraulic presses and, solvents and bottles and stuff. So that was really all I knew. And it's been ingrained in me. So I kind of grew up or basically born into this industry.
That's fascinating. I think you and I share a very similar story. My father was a chiropractor as well, and I kind of grew up similar to you, not
Yeah.
having any antibiotics or anything
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
growing up. So
Yeah.
I know how valuable that kind of upbringing is. So how did it all start? I know you said that you started in the business almost right after high school, but how
Yeah.
did your passion for chemistry and, the lab environment start?
Yeah. So as a kid, when I wanted to get a car and pay for car insurance, my dad employed me in his chiropractic office. And that was from everything from cleaning toilets, filing papers, bringing patients from room to room, but also shaking the herbs in the garage. So it extended into sort of, kind of an internship in herbal medicine. So as a teenager, was grinding herbs and shaking them in bottles and pouring them into small bottles and labeling things. Don't tell the FDA, this all occurred in our non-GMP facility in the garage. Then he sold them to various chiropractors as well as his own patients. So the lab sort of began as an after thought for quality control of that original business. So in high school, there was a question over some raw materials we were going to use in the tinctures. And my mom, as a microbiologist, had given us the Sudberg family microscope to use to do some analysis. And long before my dad's entry into acupuncture, herbal medicine, and chiropractic, he was a chemist. So he studied chemistry in college. Had a very interesting history back then in the '60s with that skill set, and then so brought that over to doing our own quality control analysis for raw materials for his tinctures. To make a long story short, we failed some raw ingredients, and the vendors asked why. And we gave them a full C of A because that's all I knew at the time. Transparency in chemistry as a college student at this time is really the only way you can survive. And so we gave these very transparent reports, and they asked us to repeat testing, and we let them know we weren't allowed, and then let us know that there's no one else to do this type of work. And I grew up with a microscope. I love plants and chemistry, and just kind of it worked. It worked well, and we began Alkemist Labs kind of by accident, and then realized it's a thing with a very strong foothold and no one else in the space doing what we were doing. And that was basically our first 10 years, is that little lab that no one really knew but people were starting to know that could do plant analysis better than anyone else.
That's so fascinating. So that, basically, I think you said on Tuesday when we toured your lab that next year will be 30 years. So this
Yeah.
started 30 years ago, and then you went
Correct.
and did a degree in chemistry.
That's correct.
And then sort of how did it evolve from there?
Yeah, so I'll share also my degree in chemistry was a struggle. In high school, I cheated my whole way through chemistry. I hated it. And I also sold fake cannabis to friends and girlfriends in high school. So the universe has a funny way of circling back and punishing me to have to run this lab and get a degree in chemistry and make sure no one else buys fake plants. Um, so it was a struggle. Like it was a 10-year bachelor's of arts in chemistry when it should have been four-ish. But at the same time, from 17 to 27, I basically took sort of leadership role in the lab. My dad's a great chemist and didn't really want to manage people. And I should have stayed a business major. I would have majored a lot, or I would have finished a lot sooner than chemistry, but had to understand the product we're going to sell, which is chemistry. So yeah, so in the first 10 years of business, it was a struggle doing both college and starting this company and building a group of staff. A few of them are still here. We have people closing in on 17 years, 15 years, 18 years. So built quite a long tenure of great employees.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, 30 years is a long time. I'm sure you went through tons of ups and downs,
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges that come to mind in building this company over 30 years?
Labs are not cheap. It's not.
Hmm.
It's not an easy barrier to enter. You can make a product a lot cheaper than you can test it. And so that was a challenge one because we were self funded. Never had any investors. The original investment was my bar mitzvah money and my dad's 401k that we both cashed in to buy some equipment. Um, and then SBA loans. And so the big challenge is really you look at who we compete with. There's a handful of small labs, currently remaining only a couple. Uh, back up 10, 15 years ago, there was, maybe five or six. All of them have been acquired by the big Goliaths. And so, we're competing with absolute monsters. Some of our competitors have 90,000 employees globally and do work in the
Wow.
billions. We're closing in on 60 and I'm very proud of our size and numbers. But we're a rounding error in their balance sheet. So if or when they want to come for us, it's a David and Goliath scenario. We know how that story ended up though, and so we're doing great and have secured a nice foothold in this pretty big industry with some big competitors. But that's probably the biggest competition or biggest challenge is the big competition.
Yeah. And what do you think sets you apart, from those companies?
I think the first thing is our expertise. We are at least 10 to 15 years ahead of any lab in this industry. We have an amazing collection, a world-class herbarium of control samples of nearly 20,000 specimens from nearly 2,000 species of plants and fungus. No other lab has that.
Yeah.
And we, because we were kind of so um, l- hardly funded, scarcity kept us low tech. The low tech applied to plant identity, and it really gave us an opportunity to be experts, to become experts and be thought of as experts globally in identity testing. Later, shortly after that, we expanded into potency testing, so we can let you know if you have ginger powder or not. And then of course, gingerols in the ginger, and then the most recent expansion is the contaminant testing, the metals, pesticides, residual solvents, and some microbiology. So that expansion has been slow and steady, but really based on client demand. But what sets us apart is that we started off early and focused on the plants and the fungus, and no one else did. Everyone else is really a generalist lab. Think about like a big box retailer versus a butcher shop or
The
your grocery
boutique. Yeah.
person, a boutique. So we are absolutely more boutique. That also allows us to have more of a personal touch. I think um, I'm a consumer, and I'm always watching how a business is trying to get us to buy things and that experience. And I want the experience to be enjoyable. It doesn't have to be just a binary process like you're working with a robot, or it doesn't have to be too personal. But we have a really great sales team and really great relationships with all our clients, and our customer service experience is really better than any other lab as well because we're so small and we care. And then lastly, I think there's a genuine passion for the space that exists between me and my father, as well as most of our employees. They truly believe in the mission that we have to improve global access to safe and effective natural medicines. I don't know
Yeah.
what the other labs' missions are, but we really live and breathe our mission. We absolutely believe in the products we're testing, and the clients we're serving, and the industry we're serving. And I think that passion shows up in our integrity in the testing.
Yeah, absolutely. For the people that don't know much about testing, what's the difference between identity testing, potency testing, and then all the other things that you test for? Can you sort of
Right.
outline all
Sure.
the service that you provide for the industry?
Sure. Yeah. So the FDA gave us some vague recommendations, rules, laws. Vague in a sense they didn't really tell us how to test, but they said you have to do identity, potency, and contamination. So the simplest one is really contamination. Is it free or within the limits of levels for heavy metals, pesticides, residual solvents, and microbiological contamination? That's our most recent venture of expansion. It's probably the easiest because they're just commodity testing. You don't have to really invent crazy methods for those. You back out then into the analytical side of things, how much of a thing is in your thing. So, you can buy green tea powder. It could be extracted, but if you only tested it by genetic analysis, or if you're looking for the wrong things, you would never know the quantity of the compounds in the plant in the sample. So measuring things like caffeine or EDCG or polyphenols or resveratrol or withanolides or those types of key marker compounds in botanicals and or mushrooms are critically important for a quality control step. So it's like how strong is it? Is it going to work? Now that's a careful phrase because this industry can't really talk much about our products working, but we measure quality, and quality infers efficacy, and the consumers know that, the brands know that. Most importantly, though, because why would you do these two things on the wrong sample, is identity testing. So you can have great caffeine and or EDCGs on sawdust with no pesticides or residual solvents or metals, but it might not be green tea, because you can just basically apply chemicals to a carrier and trick HPLCs or poor labs or unsuspecting chemists with that type of work. So identity testing is really critically important for this industry. It's required by law, and it involves a variety of tests, from macroscopic, just looking at things with your eyes, to microscopic, looking at samples on the microscope. And then HPTLC is the technique of choice for us, where you basically, and the beautiful thing about those two ones is that they're old. They go back, microscopy from the 1600s. HPTLC is, I think, coming in on over 100 and something years, maybe 150s, close in at least there. And they're beautiful and nuanced, and basically look at a phytochemical fingerprint to say, yes, you have this plant or that mushroom. And again, no lab really has become experts in that first step like we have. The
Yeah.
sexiness of HPLCs and GCs showed up and got everyone's attention, so they all quickly bought very expensive equipment that my bar mitzvah money couldn't afford at the time. So we stayed low tech with identity testing, and it's really helped us out quite a bit moving forward.
Yeah, and I think your herbarium is definitely, very unique, and that enables you to do that. What's the difference between chemical testing and botanical testing?
Sure. Sure.
That's
So let's say you have a plant that has caffeine, and you want to measure the amount of caffeine, and that's a method that you would deploy with HPLC. That is just saying that there's a presence and or a quantity of a particular compound or chemical in your sample. It doesn't mean you actually have the right plant. Caffeine's in a number of plants that this industry sells and that the earth grows. Identity testing is really making sure that you have the right plants. Part of that determination, it uses the chemicals that one would measure with HPLC, but we're not quantifying it as if that's the requirement. There's no chemical spec of resveratrol to say this is that particular plant, or withanolides. Monographs are very clear to show that there's a usual and customary expected amount in some chemicals, but generally they're not the one, then that's not the final determining factor whether you have caffeine or not in green tea. So identity testing is more nuanced because it's not looking at a 1 or a 0. It's more of an eyeball metric approach that generally people don't understand. If they're chemists, they have to actually back out of chemistry and somewhere go between a passionate art and love of these juicy plants we measure versus the ones and zeros of analytical chemistry. And that's what makes HPTLC extra hard and extra special, is that not everyone can get it. The most brilliant chemist in our lab doesn't like HPTLC. They like they're measuring 26.3855 and making sure that number is precise and accurate. Not that the others are not precise and accurate, but it's just a different type of skill set.
So tell me today, with all of the testing that's being done, what are the benefits for botanical ingredient companies or even brands to do testing, and what does that do for consumer confidence?
So one, it's required by law. So if you do that, you're in a good place. If you're not doing that, you can be in serious trouble. And then it goes to the next step is you could sell a product that can make people sick. Now, our
Mhm.
industry has an amazing track record of safety, the best safety record of all products governed by the FDA. You look at recall levels, deaths. Our industry has nothing compared to others, like veterinary products, heart valves, pharmaceuticals, food, cosmetics, all that stuff. So, making sure your product is safe, free from illegal levels of heavy metals and pesticides, residuals, and microbiology. Obviously, microbiology is a very serious one. You can get very sick. People could die. The now you get out of that, let's make sure the products actually work, right? You want to sell a product and make money, you need to have return sales. If you're selling a garbage product, it's not going to have any impact on the final user. They're not going to buy it again. And so quality control is one, required by law. Two, a really good idea to make sure you don't hurt people. But also two, if you want a product that works, you need to make sure it's the highest quality, and using the right lab that knows how to test. Because if you're using a lab that just tosses DNA at every plant under the sun, confirms it's the genus species, that's not saying anything about the quality of that plant.
Mhm.
It's missing parameters that it's actually going to have the things you want in it that are going to do the things we're hoping that they do that we can't talk about.
Well, there's so many claims happening on, TikTok and other platforms today.
Yeah,
And I think consumers are becoming more educated and have the
yeah,
ability to do research on the
mm,
efficacy of products or the ingredients, etc.
yeah.
Um, what advice do you have for companies that are selling ingredients or brands in order to help, create more consumer confidence in what they're selling?
So I like to make lemonade out of lemons, and I'll say the pandemic was a bunch of lemons, and some of the lemonade that came from it was that the consumers became more aware. That thrusting mandatory trust down people's throats didn't work out so well. The whole phrase "trust the science" didn't work out so well, regardless of where you were, where you are on the sides of the various arguments around the pandemic. The consumers all grew in like becoming researchers, and so did suddenly these influencers who are not educated in our field. In most cases, they're just people who look great on camera and can hold a product and can create content. And they're looking hard now. I think that the consumers are spending more time wondering what's actually in the product, what's in that pharmaceutical, what's in the food, what's on the food, what's their fabric made out of. I mean, I'm seeing advertisements for all glass coffee makers finally, like the no plastic involved, which is an old thing that's how it was, and now it's coming back. So I think it's important for us to realize that the consumers are watching, and the brands that tell the story of quality and transparency around that are the ones that are going to win the race. We can all talk about how our products were grown, how they were treated, how the people were treated. That's all really important stuff, but it's become better sameness. And I think the last frontier, last value proposition our industry has is quality, and it's
Mhm.
untapped. It's an absolute gold mine that only a few brands are really talking about. And why not? If you do the work, why wouldn't you share all the hard work that goes into it? You grow your plants beautifully. You take care of your farmers. You talk about that, but let's talk about what's actually being sold, and go further. Who's testing it? Show the results. The question I still have, and this is me talking about this for almost 14 years now, is why not? Like, why wouldn't you share?
Yeah. And, why do you think companies are not sharing that?
Hmm. It's a new type of marketing, so it's just a new way of doing things, and maybe that's challenging. I'll say the saddest reason that companies are not sharing is because they're not doing the right testing, or they are doing testing, but it's not a lab that they want to stand in front of, or I've heard some other stupid reasons that they don't want to share their great lab with the whole world because then their great lab will get busy. Like it's a really good sandwich shop in your neighborhood, and you don't let everyone know about it so it doesn't get too busy. I don't buy that one. I think it's the fact that parts of this industry are not doing it right and aren't willing to share that. And the other parts of the industry that are doing it right are some of the bigger companies, and that's a pretty big lift to suddenly share at that level. But it's happening. Gaia Herbs has had their Meet Your Herbs program for quite a while, and other brands have sort of emulated that to an extent. But I think that's the next value proposition that will be popular. The consumers, like I said, there's these little brands that are popping up with big influencers holding them up in front of their gym equipment, and they are starting with transparency and quality because they don't know any better. They just know that we don't tell everything about it. And the bigger brands, the legacy brands, are going to have to catch up if they're not already doing that.
Yeah, and I think, that the mindset needs to change from having testing as an expense, but as
Right,
an investment in
right,
consumer confidence, right?
right.
Um, Alchemist has the Alchemist Assured
Yeah,
certification stamp that you can get, when you do tests. Do you want to share a little bit about
sure.
that and how
Yeah.
that could benefit brands?
Yeah, actually, before I go there, I just want to say that I wrote an article a long time ago and I got in a little trouble with my lawyer friends, but the article is titled Labs Cost Less Than Lawyers. And the fact is, if you don't do the right testing, a couple $100 a test here and there on your various batches, it's not that expensive. It's going to be, a tiny slice of the hourly rate of your lawyer when you get in trouble. And occasionally we have clients who are, the FDA is in their facility and they are getting caught at the time for not doing something they should have done. And they desperately need our help. And we're happy to help, of course. But I can't tell you how many times that happens where they're finally saying, okay, we need to test it more, test it better. And they're needing our help really quick to dig out of a 43. So labs cost less than lawyers. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that
Alchemist
makes a lot of
Assured
sense.
is a program that I developed because I consider myself, I identify as a marketing guy with a chemistry degree. As I mentioned at lunch, I think one of my many degrees on the way to get a chemistry degree was business marketing, and I loved that one. I still love marketing, and so from the very beginning, I was just perplexed why this industry doesn't market quality. This is going back to me as a 17 or 18-year-old, and so I wanted to initially. It was a program to sort of shine light at the good players instead of bad players being called out. There's a lot of press on bad quality products, and that's great. I think that needs to happen, but there's not a lot of celebration of greatness. And so, Alchemist Assured is a voluntary surveillance program. It is not at this time a certificate or really meaningful like a certificate of anything. It's just really a program that people adhere to. So it's a voluntary surveillance program where we test the product top to bottom, identity, potency, contamination, at a cadence randomly that matches the batch sizes of our clients. So not everyone gets tested at the same time, the same way, but their products are randomly shopped. If they're finished products, we test them, we give them results, and then they get to display those results on their websites. They get to use the Alchemist Assured logo, which is a meaningful logo for those clients who are choosing to educate their buyers of what's actually happened is it's a bigger lift to get to consumer products. And we realize that more of our clients are using Alchemist Assured were ingredient suppliers. So the Verdur's, as an example, Verdure is an example of an ingredient supplier leaning on Alchemist Assured. So quite a few of their products come to us. We do the top to bottom testing and basically let their clients know that this has already come through the Alchemist gates of quality. But we always hear about customers buying ingredients from new suppliers. And they let them know, hey, we're going to buy this, but we're going to test it with Alchemist. So don't mess around. Like they're going to know. And that seems to work. So that the seal of approval is basically that for the raw ingredient suppliers that this has already been tested. Of course, you have to follow the GMPs that apply to your ingredient regardless of prior testing. But it comes with a higher level of confidence from a third party lab tested top to bottom. We don't care about the results. We want them to be accurate and reproducible. I don't care if it passes or fails. That's
Mhm.
not our problem. But we're happy to provide that data to the clients so they can know what to do. So that's what Alchemist Assured is. And that program will be growing slowly over the years as well.
Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense for companies to, have that. So
Yeah.
you obviously work with a lot of formulators, product development people. Who do you interact with most at companies?
Most of the time we're dealing with ingredient sellers and contract manufacturers. Those are our,
Mhm.
but we see, some of the biggest companies in the world just selling finished product on the store shelves, all the way to small mom and pop herb shops, just basically trying to sell their supply to brokers with our CVAs as added confidence. So we span, kind of a global footprint of any chain in the chain of custodies of this industry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what are some of the main things that that are surprises that you get in your testing? Is it fillers? Is it, heavy metals, contaminants? So what are some of the
Yeah.
things that people don't expect that show up in some of your tests with ingredients or
Yeah.
products?
So I get this question a lot, and unfortunately, I don't have a really exciting answer. Alchemist enjoys the best slice of this industry. So we have some of the best clients in this industry, and they know what they're doing. So we don't see a lot of weird stuff. And when there's a supply chain issue or, tariffs or a hurricane or a war or whatever, a pandemic, most of our clients are already prepared with their backup supply chain. They don't have to requalify unknown vendors. Um, so we don't have a huge like negative story to share. I don't have tons of failed samples. We failed plenty of stuff, but it's not like huge number, and I don't think it's representative of the entire industry. So it's representative of the Alchemist group of clients, maybe 20% failure rate these days, which is way lower than it used to be. That said, we get not crazy samples, we get crazy requests. So people will ask us all sorts of bizarre things to test, from space particles to stains on jackets to can I eat my leftovers? And we remind them that the testing will cost much more than the actual cost of the food, and a few days off work with food poisoning. So just buying your food, you know.
So people
I
actually bring their food in to get
no,
tested on the day. Is it still good for me to eat?
they send emails wanting to do that. We don't accept food testing. So, but we get some really bizarre requests that we'd like to send off to the other labs for fun. So,
That's really crazy.
yeah,
Um, so, you've built a company, you have over 50 employees now. And
yeah,
I think you really proud yourself on the values in the company. And,
yeah,
and I think as a leader, you're quite, I wouldn't say alternative, but I think you've got a different leadership style than most companies. And you really
yeah,
um, pride yourself on the culture that you've built in the
yeah.
company. I'd love you to talk about that and the values of Alchemist.
Yeah. So, the foundational values that we have are reciprocity and work-life balance. And me as a husband to a workaholic, developed those really work-life balance just in response to my own experience with my wife when she was working for, or maybe even slaving for big corporate America. She spent 10 years after her PhD working for some really big, important companies, but there was zero work-life balance. And I absolutely just detested her, her work life. And I remember thinking, I never want my employees to feel how I was feeling back then. She has since stepped out of work and raises our beautiful kids and homeschools them. And it's a wonderful situation that we get to enjoy. But I learned a lot from those years, about 10 of them, and never want my employees to feel how I was feeling. So that's one of those things that I try to instill. The bigger we get, the harder it is to hold on to that culture. Sometimes it gets me in trouble with being a real person with my people, perhaps, too personal or too real. And I've had to step back a little bit, and have had my share of recent HR encounters, sort of coaching me to sort of continue what I'm trying to do, but in a safer manner, perhaps. So that, that to me is as a concern. I want to be able to hold on to the culture of this company while we grow and get bigger and bigger, and that becomes a challenge. But things like I try to take my employees out to lunch, just me and them. We have tandem bikes. I just since it's tandem bike weather now, I just invited a
I
whole bunch
saw them.
of
Yeah.
yeah, so a whole bunch of staff who I generally have no interactions with other than a polite nod in passing. And I want them to know me. I want them to get to know them a little bit, and I think that helps the company culture when they get to know who they're ultimately working for and believe the mission that we have. The other values are important to the credibility of our testing, like tenacity and confidence and things like that, because we are a unique lab that really dives into testing complicated products with methods that don't exist yet. But the culture, the first two, reciprocity, treating people how you want to be treated. I believe I manage how I want to be managed. That's one of my things that I get to do as a CEO is manage how I think I want to be managed. That doesn't also match people who are 20 or years younger or 20 years older than me, and I recognize that. And there's a balance between figuring out what really gets each individual employee engaged. Ultimately, regardless of their age, it's respect. And having them feel valued is probably the most commonly shared value, regardless of age. So, some people like to get communications with emojis. Some people want to have a conversation with me. It's different, from the 20-year-olds to the 7-year-olds. It's a pretty big gap of how
Yeah.
each one of them gets excited by culture. But I try hard to make it a hard place to leave, not in the illegal kidnapping sense, but more like the grass is always looking greener, but it's most of the time not. And sometimes it's not even real grass; it's fake grass, and it needs to
Yeah.
be, replaced with real grass. So
I find from being in the recruiting space for 30 years, it's never about money.
yeah,
People don't leave a job
yeah,
for money. That might be what they think it is, but it's always culture that I
yeah,
think wins, and
yeah,
how they feel when they're at work.
yeah.
So what are some of the things that you do to instill work-life balance and instill a good culture? Obviously, you
Yeah.
said you treat people with respect, but what
Yeah.
other things do you do that you think is unique to most other companies?
I mean, starting with when you walk in the lab, as you saw, it's a big open, very comfortable space. There's a massive break room full of free snacks and coffee and drinks, and so you could almost not bring lunch and probably be fine with the various snacks. And just today we've got our fresh fruit and vegetable pile over there now. So the break room is really nice. There's a ping pong table. There's a Nintendo Wii Switch or one of those things that somebody plays next to it. So kind of a fun atmosphere. We have a really great gym. So
Oh
that's
yeah, I
that's
saw that.
a
Hmm.
really great gym that from heavy duty squat racks to a great treadmill, pull-up bars, tandem bikes are available. Our benefits package is significantly better than most companies our size. We have a lot of holidays, and in fact, I get every year we have to go over this, and I have to defend having as many holidays as we do because they're expensive. Every day we don't
Hmm.
work is money that we're not making, and the bigger we get, the more important those numbers become. And I'm trying my best to hold on to all the holidays we have. I'm in the middle of planning our next mother's room. We have two employees who are pregnant and they're going to come back and need a place to pump. And we've moved the mother's room around. Actually, the current mother's room is right now a really great Japanese massage chair room. So it's filled with this huge chair that massages all the parts of your body, and it's wonderful. That chair is being used all the time. Employees love that chair. So just little things like that. Like our benefits package is great. So when you leave Alchemist Labs, you go to let's say a bigger lab that maybe pays a little bit more. That culture's not there. The nice stuff's not there. The nice things like a little massage chair or a gym are probably not there. And then a boss like me who's trying to lead other leaders to be, you know, just compassionate about the various challenges of life from various ages. I've got small kids. I know pretty recently what that's all like. I remember what it's like to try to come back to work after having kids
Yeah.
for my wife and or for my even for myself. And I try to be considerate of those types of things. It has to be a place that doesn't suck for people to stay. Right, that's bare minimum. And then you add on all the other nice things. And if someone if someone needs to make the money, you can go work at a bigger lab. They probably pay you more. Or pharma, if you get out of this industry, go to pharma and make a lot more money than dietary supplements. But I think most of our employees stay because of the pay is good. There could be better, but our pay is good and our benefits are great and our culture is great. And if they have all those things, they believe in the mission that we have here, and they stay for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of it's leadership, right? Being able to articulate the vision and have your employees buy into that. So what is your why? You
Mm.
obviously have a big why. Is
Yeah.
it your family legacy? Is it
Uh,
policing the industry? What is sort
It's
of your big
it's
why?
funny. I hate cheaters. Um, I always have. I think it's a function of being a smaller kid. Like in my grade school levels years, I was super short, and remember getting cut in line and just being like ready to fight big guys as a result. Uh, I have better ways to take care of that, and that shall not be verbalized on the in public domain. But no, but I hate cheaters, and I always thought. I always felt really great, like watching the show Cops. It just felt like, yeah, they got that bad guy, and I just really, really loved that feeling when you watch that show. And law enforcement wasn't a path for me, but I find great joy. Like when that first sample failed for our own supply, it felt really good failing it. Felt like, oh, I stopped, potential harm to the patients. I stopped potential bad quality being made, and maybe he was a cheater. Maybe I caught a cheater, and I remember feeling super like um, sort of electrified by catching that sample of sage that didn't pass. It wasn't a cheater. It was a small issue that I don't think was attention, but I feel like I get excited when I do that for our clients and for the industry, and I
Yeah,
truly believe that herbs work and mushrooms work. I truly believe the diets or supplements have a really strong place in human health. I'm happy with our current administration and even the very small touches we're getting from RFK, ancillary to our industry. His attention is elsewhere because there's some really, really big things to fix in our industry. Excuse me, our industry is absolutely wonderful in comparison to food and drug. And we're not top priority, but I believe he'll get there. But the passion I have is for the industry, and it really comes because I believe in it. I believe that it
yeah,
has a place alongside Western and allopathic medicine for sure when it's appropriate. if I break my femur, I'm not going to put lavender on it. Give me everything else. And I have loved ones who have been saved by pharma with cancer diagnoses. I have great appreciation for that. But our industry has a strong position and a great place in human health. And I don't make a product, but I help our clients make them effective, and I great, take great joy from that. So that really is my why. I have
Yeah.
a cynical bad side to it. I like to catch cheaters, but I like to catch cheaters from to prevent our good industry from doing well.
Yeah, yeah, that's your passion is really tangible and you could see it walking around in your lab and
Thank
and
you.
with all the employees that are there. So you've built something really incredible.
Thank you.
I think consumers are slowly going back to natural again. I think the pandemic was a huge instigator of people taking health into their own hands and not
Yep.
seeing, Western medicine as the only option.
Right.
And I totally agree with you. I think the more we can get people to look at, botanicals and natural alternatives, I think the
Sure.
better for the health in general.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah. So, tell me more about you.
Uh,
What do you do for health and wellness? What are some of the biohacking things
uh,
that you do? And,
yeah.
what herbs and tinctures do you take on a
Oh boy.
regular basis to stay in top shape?
So for exercise, physical and mental, I'm a huge fan of jujitsu. I'm about 2 years in. So I started, which is generally a bad idea to start a combat sport at 44 years old. But for a while, I was the smallest, oldest, newest person in that group of very strong, athletic um, warriors. And I had never done any sport. I mean, I rode my bike. I never took part in any ball sports or let alone combat sports. So very, very new for me, but 100% addicted. And I love the consensual brutality of wrestling other sweaty men and before work, and then coming home, showering, and attacking my email box like it's something important, because I've already almost died twice in the morning. So currently nursing a back injury, which is why you see me keeping moving around, but that's getting better every day. So that's what keeps me going. I'm doing that about 6 hours a week right now and absolutely love it. Even going while I'm injured, I'm just going to watch and learn. I've got a beautiful wife who's my high school sweetheart. So we're going to be 20 years married in 11 days, and 30 years together in August. So that's pretty special. She was
Congratulations.
there
That's
with me when we
beautiful.
started that lab, and she was one of our first employees and has been part of every tough decision that I've had to make in the background. We have two beautiful kids, a 10 and 8-year-old. And as I mentioned earlier, my wife homeschools them, and we live fortunately very close to the lab. So just a 4 or 5 minute drive, and love spending time outside in the woods, hiking in the desert or the woods or anywhere near water. We have a little trailer we pull and spend a lot of time outside. And since they homeschool, we've got a pretty flexible schedule. You can do that just about anywhere. So that's it. It's like really family, jujitsu, and alchemists. That's what
Mm.
that's what I'm made of.
That's amazing. It almost makes me teary. I love, just your intentionality, with your life. And, I think the crazier the world gets, the more valuable a simple, highly intentional life
Yeah,
is. And, I think the more emotionally and spiritually rewarding, that kind of life is. So, thank you for
yeah,
setting such an amazing example of that,
my pleasure. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, my pleasure.
Great. Well, I so enjoyed our conversation today. Is
Twice.
there anything that we didn't cover that you think is valuable to share about Alchemist, about the industry?
Yeah,
I could talk to you for hours, but I,
likewise.
I also want to be respectful of your
Yeah.
time.
I've got one more thing in my pocket. I'll share that, this industry is wonderful and is made up of amazing products with lots of potential. And as I mentioned, the transparency is something that we're not doing a good job at. And, it's basically a story that's not being told, quality. And we talked a little bit about influencers, and they're becoming an important part of how this industry markets its products, good or bad. So there's like a new layer of marketers that are having their own story that they're telling. And then now there's a whole list of companies showing up that are now being the judges of our products in this industry with their own rubrics, which is, I think, also great, because it helps the consumers make choices and good ones, whether the products are put together well per the rubric of this brand, this website or that website. The point I'm making, though, is that there are a lot of stories being told about the quality of this industry. And if you're a brand that's not telling your own story, you're relying on someone else to do it. That could be CBS News or some medical doctor with a chip on his shoulder from Harvard about our industry. Or it could be one of these brands, these companies that are making rubrics that may not align with your own, and helping consumers make choices that could drive business to your brand or you're not based upon their parameters. Best to get aligned with them right away. But also, it's best to tell your own story. Your website's a perfect platform for it. There's extra pages available. Website developers exist. If you don't already have a page titled quality, that's ridiculous and you should. And if you don't already have a whole section on that page that you don't have on quality about how you go about making sure you sell the best, safest, and most effective product, it's a huge opportunity. It's an absolute gold mine waiting to be mined for marketing, to tell your quality story, most importantly, before someone else does and tells a different story, then you have to retell. Influencers are great, but if they're telling a story that you're not sort of helping guide, you're doing a disservice to your own brand. So my message is to tell your own quality story before someone else does. And if they're already telling your quality story, you better get aligned with them because they're going to do it better than you are. And it's just really an untapped value proposition that our industry is doing a terrible job capitalizing on.
That's almost we could almost do a whole nother podcast just on that, because I think, so many brands and distributors right now are sort of lost in this maze of how to kind of combat what's going on. And, I think that advice is so valuable. And I think testing obviously is the root of all that, right? How do you make sure that you have quality products and ingredients? So absolutely. Perhaps we can partner on a blog or something like that we can put out to the industry as well. So that's really great. And you guys really are the leaders when it comes to testing botanicals and fungi. I think there's no one else that can touch you. And so that's a great place to start.
They're trying, but it's not coming close.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Elan. Where can people reach you if they want to know about Alkemist or have questions for you specifically?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Elan Sudberg on planet Earth. And also our website is alkemist.com. It's Alkemist with a K, so ALKEMIST.com. And plenty of opportunities to find me there and chat, and happy to meet at trade shows and all that as well. But LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me.
Great. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into Leading for Wellness. This podcast is powered by Leading for Wellness CEO and Investor Events and Colon Executive Search. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your favorite social media platform. And to learn more about our services, visit leadingforwellness.com or colonsearch.com and follow us on Instagram as well.